Hello, and welcome to another feature spotlight on one of our amazing authors in the book that we all got together and wrote called The Other Side of Divorce, Breakups That Lead to Breakthroughs. So I want to introduce Stacy McAlpine. She is an amazing woman. I've known Stacy for Stacy, a couple of years now at least. And I am so grateful that she became an author in the book, and her chapter is phenomenal. So I'm really encouraging you all to get the book and take a read through. Stacy is the CEO of Journey Fuel, and I am going to just let Stacy talk about all the amazing things she does and how she helps people, because she does some amazing things in allowing people to create personal transformation. So Stacy, welcome.
Fabulous. Thank you. I'm so happy to be here.
I'm happy, and I'm going to step off the screen and just listen to all the wisdom you're going to share with us.
All right. That sounds great. Well, hello to all of you who are watching. It's been an incredible ride. Not always feeling incredible until maybe after you get through it. But I think I've gotten through enough stuff now that while I am going through some crazy stuff, I know that it's for a reason. And I know lots of people have been through lots of things. And when people say, oh, everything happens for a reason, it can feel very trite. I've been through some stuff that, didn't feel like there could be a reason. So as tragic as some of those things can be, there's always something, even if there are some awful things, that ultimately will come out of it, that will give you some sort of wisdom, some perspective, some empathy. Even if something awful happened that seems like there's absolutely no reason, that is unjustifiable in the world of, when you think about things like miscarriages or things that are just unfathomable. Like you think about St. Jude's and all the kids in there, all of those things that seem so awful. I'm not ever saying that those are not awful. What I am saying is that there will always be something, that a difference you can make in that person's life, a next person's life, something along your soul's journey. There will be something that impacts somebody somewhere, and yourself, even when you don't feel like maybe it is, that will ultimately give you some gift that didn't feel like a gift when you were going through it. So I believe that every soul has its own journey on the planet. And I actually read this once. It was actually when I was about to tell my daughters about my father and him, which my girls don't know this, so, but ultimately they will. That he committed suicide a few years ago. And I had to decide if I was going to tell my girls at the time, who were 3 and 7, the, that really happened, or, some other version of how he died. And I did all this research on it. And it was basically, don't lie. Whatever you decide to tell them, just don't lie. And so we were at a point where we were about to move across country in a few weeks. They were going to be changing. I was already after a divorce where they were going to be going through a lot more change as we started to negotiate how we were going to get across country and all these different things in their lives. So I was doing research on how do I manage this conversation. And I found this amazing thing about soul's journey and the 7 stages of life. And it was about of that journey. And whatever you believe, in this case, it was that there are these 7 stages, and that within each stage, you could go through, it could take 7 years, it could take 10 years, it could take however long for your soul to evolve. So it's called evolution of souls. And within each one of those, you're a different level of maturity as a soul on the planet. And it explained that no matter how long or how short your time on the planet is, that there is a reason in the evolution of that soul for that to happen. So even if it feels like, okay, why would somebody have a child and that child only have 6 months life? It could very well be that that is part of that soul's journey that that was the amount of time that they were supposed to be here. So there's a lot of different ways to look at things. And when I was talking to my girls, I was thinking about, okay, well, I'm not ready to tell them that he committed suicide. I thought that would be too traumatic. So I just said he stopped breathing. And because at first I was going to wing the conversation. I'm like, this is not a wing it conversation. I need to be more prepared. And what was great about learning that evolution of soul's way of thinking was I was able to explain to them it's kind of like a caterpillar turning into a butterfly. That he's not on the planet, but that we all have our own journeys, and he could just be something else right now or going through a different version of that journey wherever it is. And it was this part of his journey that ended. And it was hilarious, which does not sound like that would be a hilarious conversation, but my girls were like, I think he's a cow. I he would love to be a cow. He'd get to be out in the forest or out in the lawn, pasture, eating all day and just chilling out. Vision of my dad now being a cow, very happy in a pasture. So, however your beliefs are, however you choose to have different ways of interpreting things, my belief is that we don't know everything, that thinking about each person and each individual in our own selves, learning something, gaining wisdom, having some form of meaning to whatever it is that we may not know what that is right now. It's just accepting and knowing that there's something in this that if not me, somebody else is getting something from my experience. And it was very interesting. Another story was someone that I used to work with quite some time ago. He had a scare where it scared everybody in his family. He ended up just having this pain, ended up, when he was like this healthy man, ended up in the hospital, died 3 times on the table as they were trying to figure out what the heck was going on with him. And his neighbor was a doctor, and it was like the middle of the night, and he just had this feeling that something was wrong and he needed to go to the hospital. Like he wasn't a surgeon, he was like a heart surgeon or something, unrelated to what this other man was going through. And he just had this feeling, I need to go to the hospital. And he goes in, it happened to be the hospital that he worked at, this doctor, and went into the operating room. And the doctors that were trying to figure this out, it was like hour 8 of this surgery trying to figure out. And those doctors looked at the neighbor doctor and said, I don't think he's going to make it. And the doctor said, well, that's not an option. He's my friend, so we're going to need to figure it out. He got on the phone, called every specialist he knew, and he ended up living. Like I get really emotional thinking about that. And what he didn't realize was he never was told, the one that was saved. He was never told that he had actually died on the table. Like he didn't even know that that had happened. And then he accidentally, nobody ever told him, didn't want to freak him out. And when he found out, it was like, oh my gosh, that guy basically, if he hadn't done that, you know. And so my interpretation of that was, well, maybe that doctor will now forever always believe his instincts. Never take for granted some sort of calling or some sort of instinct that you have, because you never know when it's going to change the game for somebody. And another thing was when, and then the guy who was saved ended up in a coma for, I don't know how, like a couple of months, I believe, or 6 weeks, something like that. And when he finally came out, he asked for his sister, which he was married, he had his mom was still alive, but he asked for his sister. And his sister had always kind of, I don't know, not insecure about their relationship, but didn't realize how important she was to him. Get all crazy emotional. But so when I think about that, I think maybe she needed to hear that. Like, can you imagine being a sister of someone not knowing your meaning or how important you are, to now know that that was the first name that came out of their mouth, It's things like that. So it might not even have anything to do with the guy that this went through, who went through it. Every single person that was impacted or around, there was a ripple effect to that. And so all of that to say, when you think about my story and the reason I'm telling you all of this, my background has been all about process improvement, change management, project management from the time I got out of college. And I was about 25 plus years now. I used to say it's about 20 years ago, and then I keep getting older. So I guess it's like more and more every second. But I've always been drawn to how to make something better. And then once I know, and I know other people are struggling with that or have the same challenge, it made no sense to me to keep that information to myself. It just doesn't make any sense. So no matter what job I was in or anything else, it was if I solved something and I could help somebody else with that, it was always something I was very passionate about. And so I was in consulting with big four consulting firms, working with large organizations. Some of my clients were Google, some of my clients were Department of Defense, Homeland Security, doing some massively cool, impactful projects for companies where they were paying millions of dollars for my team to come, literally to come in and help them with the big project that would deliver a new outcome that they'd never had before. So it's not something I had ever done before, nothing that nobody, my team knew how to deliver or solve that specific thing, but we knew methodologies to come in and assess what is it that you're trying to accomplish, help them think through what is it that you need to know to accomplish that, and who needs to be involved, what are the resources, and then how long is it going to take, how much money do you need, and then manage that. That's what project management is identifying what is it that the outcome is, not just the thing that you're doing, but what is the outcome that you want. So for example, if they're replacing an IT system for payroll, that sounds really boring, right? But what it really was that wasn't that they were replacing the system. It was they wanted to be able to pay people faster. And they wanted to not have to use paper and lose paper all the time and make it more effective and being able to deliver the outcome of having a proven way of making sure people are getting paid. So it's a little different of a mission. And it's also something that you're working toward that isn't the thing. It's kind of like if you want to have a house. Why do you want the house? It's not because you want a house. It's because you want the experience of living in this place, right? There's something that place is going to deliver in your world that you want to experience. So if you think about the outcome of what you're going for and eliciting that from others is what I do, helping you really get to where you can articulate that to yourself. Well, how do you want to feel? What are the things you want to get from that? And then work toward that feeling versus toward the thing you might think is going to give you that feeling. So that's what I used to do for companies. And then about 5 years ago now, so again, who knows, maybe I'm year 6, I shifted from organizational consulting to helping individuals because it's the same method. It's asking questions to help people identify what it is that you want to achieve, an outcome, and getting that clarity for people with a method that works every time. So change management is after you've done project planning, and then the people now need to implement the process that you're creating that's new. And so each person has to be on board with that and change their behavior. They need to change what they've been doing. And so change management is the people side of change that's all about getting people to want to do it. Not just to, okay, fine, I'll do it. Everybody says, oh, every time some new person comes in, they're going to change the process, whatever, but if you could get that person on board and see the value to them to do it, oh, you won't have to work as many hours overtime. You'll get to come in, it'll be easy, things like that. Then it would be able to help them want to change, and then it makes it all smoother. So then what I do with my clients is help them identify, okay, how are you going to want to do what it's going to take to get that outcome so it doesn't feel like a drag? And then helping them articulate that and then creating a plan for, okay, so now how are you going to get there and want to do it so it's more magnetic versus like a Sisyphus pushing a rock up a hill, right? So that's basically in a nutshell what I do and help clients do. And it's using these methodologies that I used that haven't been used in the personal development space that can help people really start to change their lives in a way that makes their experience of life something that they enjoy. So that's sort of a big, long way of explaining why I do what I do. There's some things that you can take away from that. And, I love helping people do that kind of thing. So, with that, I'll let Marnie ask me some questions.
Well, no, Stacy, I think that's fantastic because I know you and I have talked. I've attended several of your workshops and things that you've done. And let's face it, since we're talking specifically about moving through the divorce, and I know your chapter includes, moving through your divorce and then really being able to implement some of these strategies to make changes.
Yeah.
Why do you think big life transitions, which I think mirrors big changes in companies as well, by the way, why do you think those become the points where we get stuck rather than going, yay, we get to do some change here? Like, why are we wired as human beings to get stuck when we run into change and transitions?
Well, it really comes down to fear. There's a behavioral element of our being. And when you think about, I don't know how many of you are familiar with Maslow's hierarchy, but it's basically human needs, the pyramid that has different layers. And the layer at the bottom is about survival.
Right.
So food, water, shelter, you're not going to die in the middle of the night or starve to death. The next one is safety. And so in order to have safety, you have to have been eating and know you're not going to die. And the next one is to make sure that you're safe in your environment, that, that you're not at risk for somebody coming and hurting you or like emotionally or physically. And then the next layer is around social. So social interaction, there's a human need for social elements. But if you are starving to death or you don't feel safe, the social element is not a priority. And above that, once you hit, oh, but I have friends and I feel good. And then the next one is achievements. So that's when it's like, oh, I'm going to go for CEO or I'm going to go for this big dream or, but if you don't have a social life, you don't have a human relationship, being able to get there is not, you're not going to be able to be 100% focused on that. But then once you have that, then there's self-actualization at the top. So when you have all that stuff,
right,
then you kind of get almost like that evolution of souls almost.
Yeah.
So if you think about that from a divorce perspective and you're afraid of maybe financial change, there's some nasty stuff that happens in divorces. People that you think were never going to hurt you turn into these crazy monster, take everything people.
Yeah.
I experienced that myself where I was the breadwinner and I wanted every single thing that I ever had to financially, all the stuff. And I had to make a decision. Am I going to fight for that or am I going to just give it up and just deal and, have my safety of not having to deal with that person and have the relationships that I want to have and not be tortured to be able to get to whatever those achievements might be that money can buy or the things can buy. But each person has their own thing. I had a friend of mine who was so her husband had done so many awful things as she was going through the divorce that she really felt like she wouldn't feel okay if he got away with it without some sort of consequence. So each person in whatever form needs something from that experience, but it comes down to what level are you on the human needs perspective.
Right.
And a lot of times the other person turns nasty and you have to make a decision. What is the impact that's going to have on my life? How can I be safe and have the relationships that I want to have? Sometimes it means you have to get out of that relationship in order to be safe, emotionally or physically. In my experience, I didn't know that it was an emotional abusive situation. I grew up under narcissism. My dad was a narcissist. My mom's mom was a narcissist. And I didn't even know what that word was until 7 years of therapy later. But it was emotionally abusive relationships keeps you in the safety zone versus, just trying to be safe. Sometimes you've got to get out of that in order to ever evolve to the next level. So it's finding people who can help give you that perspective. Sometimes you can't read the label from inside the jar.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
exposing yourself to other people that can see for you that you're not being a horrible human to leave a relationship that isn't the right relationship for you. But it takes other people, especially if you're married to somebody who is messing with your head to make you feel, oh, you're a horrible person. You're really selfish. Why would you ever do this to your children? They'll mess with your head to make you feel like a horrible person, but you're not. You're just not exposed to people who can say, that is ridiculous. That is not who you are.
Yeah.
So that's one thing for sure.
And I was going to say, it's nice and I know sometimes women get out of those abusive relationships, and we're not necessarily talking about physical, but that emotional abuse or financial abuse, which obviously still impacts you at that safety level because you don't have financial safety and security. But and I love Maslow's hierarchy. I just think that's such an effective way to describe so many things. But one of the things that I find is that you don't just step out of those relationships and it's like, a switch flips and all of a sudden you're like totally self-confident. You recognize all of their crap and everything they've loaded on you. There's still, that inner voice in your head keeps going, right? And if you, a lot of times, like there's a lot of research now that talks about people who are, I'm just going to use the term codependent in relationships. That's not something you don't wake up one day and go, gosh, I'd really like to be a codependent to a narcissistic or an attachment avoidant personality type. Like you just do that. So a lot of times this is all stuff that came from our childhood that we saw our parents model or our lack of parents model, even before we were able to talk about it or to recognize it. And it just became part of how our brain sees life. So we do have to give ourselves time after divorce. And that's what I think this book is all about, right? Is okay, how did we all, given that we all went through a divorce, how did we recreate or invent or reinvent ourselves after that? Because I was lucky. I didn't have that emotional abusive side of my divorce. It just wasn't a sustainable relationship. But I work with so many women that are dealing with this. It's a real struggle. And having somebody like you who has a proven system that can walk you through recognizing, and I love that you can't read the label from inside the jar because you can't see your own behaviors. That's the problem because we're already looking at it from our own lens, right, Stacy?
Yeah, exactly. And about the book, what I love about this book and why I participated, I'm so grateful to have been invited to be a part of this amazing resource for you, is that that's part of seeing the label from when you're inside the jar, right? You can read things like maybe you don't have people in your life that are positive experiences of people that can help you, or sometimes your friends are afraid to say stuff. When I got divorced or said I was going to finally get divorced, you're like, oh, thank God. Didn't listen to me, and I wanted to be a supportive person, right? But this book has so many stories of women, and it's all women, I believe.
Yeah.
That women that have had that experience, and even if you're a man reading the book, I mean, even seeing what women go through, it doesn't mean that men don't go through the same thing.
I was going to say, I think there's this sense that women and men go through divorce differently. And yes, we know there's some financial disparity that comes out of most divorce cases and things like that. But I have started working with men in the last 6 to 8 months. And I really think men and women have a very similar mental response to a difficult relationship. Like, I think, some people say, oh, men just don't care because they don't have the same maybe displays of emotion as women do. But I think they just deal with it in a different way. And I don't think it's necessary. I don't think it's necessarily a healthier way, because a lot of times it's drinking, jumping into new relationships. But that women can do the same thing, getting so caught up in their work that their work takes over their life because they don't want to deal with life. So they focus on work. Like women can do the same thing. I don't think there's that much difference.
I mean, when women are from Venus, men are from Mars, or the other way around. There's definitely elements that may be different from an emotional perspective or way to deal with it. But what I've found, and what I actually love it when I get to coach both men and women, especially in a group situation, because I actually had this experience and it was awesome. And one of my was a Walk the Talk weekend program where it was a 3-day program. And it was all about identifying what is it that you actually want your experience of life to be, and then determining what is it that's going to deliver that from what are the most important things on my planet? What is it that, if I didn't have one of these 7 things, I call them core 7, that there would be a hole in my life. That if you took one of those things away, there would be that empty space, as Stuart Little would say. But there's up to 7 things in your life that if when you can get it down to that, now you have a filtering system. Oh, okay. Does it fit one of those 7? Yes or no? No. Okay. Well, I'm not going to think about that. If it's yes, then what do I do with that? But so as we were going through that, there's a lot of reflection to do that. And what I loved about the group is this one woman was saying that my husband is always asking me to do all this stuff, and I feel like all my time is being done with this. And this one guy came off mute and said, well, then stop saying yes. And she was like, well, I don't know that I could just do that. And he gave an example of how he was asking his wife to do stuff all the time. And it wasn't until she said no or explained why that wasn't going to be a priority for her, he didn't even recognize that he was putting her in this position. So a lot of times we don't even have the conversations that can keep us from accepting situations that aren't acceptable to us. But you really have to have that time to yourself to think about, well, what is the experience of life I want to have? What is it that's going to deliver that experience? And can I ever have that experience where I am today? Yes or no? And if it's no, then it becomes, okay, what's one thing I can do to get closer to being able to have that? So you don't have to have the big picture. And one of the biggest, most impactful things that happened to me when I was going through it is I knew I could not have the experience of life. And you'll read in my chapter, my whole thing, so I won't even tell you what happened. But it was a moment that there was a moment. It's not a moment that just happens, but it evolves over time. And then there was a moment. Right. And I realized the impact of staying was going to have on my kids. So I was staying for the kids. And then I realized staying was actually going to affect them in a very negative way and repeat this behavior of accepting other people being emotionally abusive and that was okay. And so it was one of those things where you still starts to mess with you. Like you said, even if you know it, there's like, well, what if I'm a horrible human being? Or he was saying, you're a very selfish human. You keep saying that it's for the kids, but this is not going to work. You aren't upholding your vow, like making up all these horrible things that I'm the horrible person. There's a lot of things that he did that were not part of that nice person. But anyway, the point being that I was starting to doubt myself of, am I being a horrible person? And what if I don't ever find another relationship, or what if I do go broke? What's going to happen? How am I going to pay for my life? And my friend said, one foot in front of the other. Yeah. And it sounds, some people like, well, I have to think about the future. Well, the future changes with the next step anyway. You think, oh, there's this security of staying or the security of not changing. Well, things always change. I'm in LA right now, and there's some, 180,000 people have been evacuated from their homes because these fires are out of control. That happened like that. Pacific Palisades, one of the most wealthy neighborhoods in the country, gone, burned to the bottom. I mean, it's crazy. So there is no, it's going to plan for the future. Oh, something, if I don't have this now, or if I make this change, then my whole world's going to implode. Well, you don't even know if it could implode anyway. Yeah. Yeah. Right. So
Stacy, you have shared some amazing stuff, and I can't say enough about reading each one of these chapters. And I'm going to, I'm saying this because yes, I would love you to buy the book, but also because I really believe this. Even if you're 2 or 3 or 4 or longer out of your divorce, or even if you're still in a relationship, these stories are going to be applicable because they talk about things like what Stacy just talked about, is how to decide, can you create the life you want to live if you're in your situation right now? That doesn't mean you're ever going to leave your spouse. It may just be you have to go back to school, or you have to change your career, or you need to, open your own business or whatever. All of this stuff can be applicable. So, Stacy, you
Absolutely.
are a phenomenal resource for your clients. And I am so honored that we're in this book together, that we have
Yeah,
created
me too.
this. And yeah, I am just thank you so much for sharing your message.
Absolutely. I know we're at the end. I just wanted to say one thing because something that really helped me too. There was a book that was basically about how to decide one foot in, one foot out. Like you can never have a life one foot in, one foot out, right? You have to make a decision one way or another, all in one way, all in the other way, because otherwise you're just always questioning yourself. In this book, if you're trying to figure out if you're going to leave, or if you've already made the decision and are going through whatever it is, because there's so many different stories from so many different people, there's going to be something that you'll be able to pick up on, or could be that missing piece that helps you make the which direction am I going to put both feet in, and so I can actually live your life one way or another. And that's what I love about this book, is that whatever stage you're in, or even men who know women who are going through this, or men who want to see the perspective of what women go through, whatever it is, or even relate to their own elements of this, because it's not just unique to women what these situations are. On the other side, men who are in bad relationships that other women are doing awful things.
Right.
It's all context, that being able to read the label from outside the jar to see, does that relate to me? And something will come out of this book that can maybe be that one thing that
Yeah.
helps you make a decision.
Yeah. Great point, Stacy. Thank you so much for your time today. And it's just like I say, it's so exciting to be a part of this, and the resource that it offers people. So again, thank you, Stacy.
Thank you.